Welcome to Big Hearted Indy, where we empower men in Indianapolis to forge deep connections and impactful lives through authentic friendships and service. Join us as we explore personal growth, community leadership, and the transformative power of living out our faith in action. The podcast is produced by Citizen 7, and it is hosted by Greg Enas, Don Palmer, and I am Chris Spangle. And today our guests are Rob Wynne and Tim Harris Sr. Thank you both for being here. Let me kick it off with, let's start with Greg. Greg, introduce our guests. Tell us about their friendship and why you and Don invited them here today.
Well, I'm going to introduce Don, actually, because Don knows these guys. I had a chance to work a little bit with Rob in the same building way back when, so we've danced around with Tim. I've known his son for a few years now, and it's just a delight to be here. But with that, I'll turn over to my great friend, Don
It's
Palmer.
great to have Don back. We've missed you, Don.
Hey, thank you. Well, Rob and I go back since we were 10 years old, and his mother started one of the largest urban tennis programs in the country, raising money for that, but started the Washington Township tennis program, which is really nationally known, certainly has produced probably more state champions than any place in the state of Indiana, regardless of where they went to high school. So Rob and I talked about his house was like kind of the clubhouse for junior high kids. He had a big family and he had all sorts of friends, and his dad was one of the founders of Duke, of PR Duke. And his mother was out on the tennis court teaching from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the kids had the run of the house with a lady named Dorothy, who was like family to them and certainly beloved. So we go from way back, and I got to know Tim through Rob, and Tim has just an absolutely fascinating story, and his love for his faith and his love for helping people help themselves, empowering people through education is quite a remarkable story. So we're looking forward to today to having some conversation.
Well, that's great. Tell us how you two met. Let's start there. How did you two become friends? When did you first meet?
You want me to kick it off?
Kick it off.
Okay. So I was actually working on a project. There's actually two instances that happened, but one was on a project in Iowa, and I needed $150 million. So somebody told me, the guy in town that can help you get $150 million is Rob Wynne. So made the call.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Rob.
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, look, and
we're friends now.
He made one phone call and had the 150. Go ahead.
Well, hold the mic up.
Sorry. I remember that.
I think there's going to be a lot. Maybe you're going to get a lot of calls. Hey, could you give me $5,000?
I remember going out the first time, and this is interesting. I don't know if this happens to everybody, but it happened to me. And I get in, I meet Tim. We're looking at each other. Says, "Let's go get in my car." I go, "Okay." So we get into his car, a big Escalade, as I recall. We started driving. Where are we going? It's not lunchtime or anything. We drive over to Turning Point Academy. You know, if you're going to work with me, you got to see the school. There's no separation between what I do and what I care about. And we get over there, and I'm sitting there. Okay, what have I got myself into? And we toured the school probably for about an hour and a half. And I'd never seen anything like it. I'm not going to steal his thunder on what it is, but I believed at the time that anybody who came as a vendor, a professional, aspire, whatever, if you were going to do business with Harrison Ford and Tim Harris, you were going to go see the school. It's so intertwined with what he does, not just in his business, but his life. And from that moment on, I mean, he had me at that moment, right? Whatever, the 150 million, okay, but that he was so wrapped up in something this special that, okay, I found somebody here that I'm going to spend a lot of time working with and getting to know. So that was a great day, and it's been a great almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Tell us about Turning Point Academy. Like, what did he see that impressed him?
So again, what Rob is saying is the reason why I even work. My motivation is reversed from a lot of folks. I work so I have to give. And I wanted Rob and others that come in, whether it's, a customer like a Procter & Gamble or a Coke, I love to take them to see, because that speaks the volume of what I'm about. Okay. And I mentioned the 150 million, which was a true story, but my real driver is just that, down the street. And not just down the street, but around the world. We've worked with youth. My wife and I have worked with youth since 1980. And so we were motivated when we seen that one apartment complex, Sutton Place, had 7 murders in 1 year around the 42nd and Post area. And so we wanted to do something there where we could contribute all year long. That was one of the motivations behind starting a school there. Around that time, Goldsmith was mayor. He got one appointee to the Sports Corp board. I was that appointee. And we interacted. And again, when I seen that was where the need was in Indianapolis, that's where I went.
Let's back it up.
Yeah.
That's right.
To be sure we lay a foundation.
Okay.
So just tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, a little about your career.
That's great. So I grew up in small town Ohio, Ohio's first and third capital,
Oh, right.
Chillicothe, Ohio.
Okay.
Born and raised there. My dad, Obadiah Harris, he only went to the 7th grade. And so to really frame the story, my dad started working at Mead Paper Mill, which was the largest paper mill in the world. He started working there at 12 years old, shoveling lime, shoveling coal out of the cars. And he had to work there because his dad was in prison for murder, right? And so he had a younger sister that was an invalid. Every day he'd carry her down the stairs, set her by the pot, go out and work hard. That's my background, a family where you had the most loving mom ever, and you had a father who worked, his fingers to the bones, so that his 3 boys had to give. And Mom, across the street from us, Chillicothe is noted for 2 things, actually 3. Mead Paper at that time has the largest VA hospital in the world. I describe it by the 2 18-hole golf courses, right? And my dad went from working, you ask about me, but really to talk about me, you need to understand, right, that my dad started out as a janitor. He then he became a cook. He ended up chief of dietetics with the 7th grade education, 210 folks working for him.
Wow.
High school in Chillicothe, Ohio. Then I went to Wilberforce University, a historical black college, right outside of Xenia, Ohio, which is outside of Dayton, Ohio. And then also University of Dayton. But if I could take one more minute.
Sure.
So my background was on basketball court. I could hoop, man. And in 10th grade, we were great. Yeah. Mark Bayless, he played 2 guard. I played 1. He became Mr. Basketball 2 years later. Yeah. But basketball was more what I was into. One day I was in chemistry class, 12th grade, and somebody came to the class and said, the guidance counselor wants to see Tim Harris. Usually that's not good. Okay. and let me also say,
I've had a few of those calls over the year.
At this point in time, I'm fighting. I've been in Black Belt Magazine for Wynne and Harris. I started fighting men's black belt at 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so they come to my class and say, we want to see Tim Harris. And I'm like, man, this is bad, but I'm having a memory lapse of what I did.
What did I do?
Don, I walk into this room and here's 3 guys in gray suits, suit and ties. And he said, they want to talk to you. It looked like FBI agents. And I said, okay, what do you want to talk about? They said, we want to talk to you about being an engineer. I had never heard of an engineer in my whole life. Okay. So when they said engineer, that kind of engineer, I said, I'm not interested. This is going to be a very short conversation. I said, I'm not interested in driving a train and wearing a hat looking like Abraham Lincoln. And they started laughing. And then they looked and saying, this guy is serious, man. I had no idea.
Never seen an engineer.
Never heard about it. Engineer in my home. And so they said, nah, engineers invent stuff. Okay, you got my attention. And they ran through the different disciplines. That's how I got involved in chemical engineering. And God allowed that to be another stepping stone to get to where we are today.
So then you went to Wilberforce.
Wilberforce 3 years.
To study engineering.
So somebody like me who was focused on the ball court, I didn't have my dad saying to me, get your education.
Yeah.
I had my dad saying to me, boy, you work to provide for your family. And so I wasn't, back then it was ACT, not SATs.
Right.
I'm older than everybody in here. So it was ACT.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it took me 2 to 3 minutes. It took me longer to write my name than it did for me to do the test, because I just drew a line all the way down through it so I could go out to the court. And then when the results come back, and they said, man, you could have got a scholarship if you did well. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I didn't nobody told me that. It was just cutting into my ball time. But Wilberforce and University of Dayton, they collaborated. They got together and they said, hey, we want to get more blacks involved in engineering. At that point in time, less than 2% of chemical engineers were black. And so they come to our school and say, hey, this is a potential candidate, Tim Harris. And thank God they reached out. So University of Dayton and Wilberforce said, hey, let's do this. 3 years at Wilberforce. And so you get your math skills together, whatever skills you need to get together so that when you go to Dayton the last 2 years, you're ready. And when I went, I was ready. I was more than ready. That's how that happened between Wilberforce and Dayton. And I wish more schools would be doing that kind of program today.
Yeah. So what was your first big break as you look at your career?
As I look at my business career?
Yeah.
So those folks were from a nuclear enrichment plant, Goodyear Atomic. This data I've been told, even when I've been told and researched, was that plant used 1/50th of all the energy in the U.S. at the time, of all the electricity at that one plant. I was looking forward to going there and working as a co-op, because that was the other part of the deal. Wilberforce is a co-op school. And so by the time I graduated, I would have over a year's working experience as well. I didn't get a chance to work in the plant. Everybody else, their security clearance came through in 2 weeks' time. Mine did not come through for whatever reason. It got lost in the shuffle because at a nuclear plant, you have to have clearance, right? And so I had to work offsite at a water treatment plant. Never really got exposed to the plant. And just as an aside, I believe that even God's hand was on me because of that, because I have a brother that died at 48, a cousin that died at 40, and the list goes on and on and on. The government gave him like $250,000. My big break, I'm at Wilberforce, and at that time, my guidance counselor said, you will be the lowest paid engineer in your class. But I have this company from Cleveland called Diamond Shamrock, which is now Occidental. And he said, they really want you to work for them. If you take this job, you'll be the highest paid engineer co-op in your class. And again, that was an immediate break. And then they reimbursed me all of my school costs, tuition, room and board, everything. And then they guaranteed me that when I graduated, I would be the highest paid engineer in the University of Dayton's graduating class. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Then what brought you to Indianapolis?
And in 8 years of marriage, lived in 7 different cities, working with the same company. We moved here from Dallas from New York from Cleveland, et cetera, et cetera. It was a great experience because I started out working in the lab. I worked in production. Then the VP of sales came in, Jerry Fowle, while I was standing on top of a furnace in New York that was 2,500 degrees below my feet. I could, at every step, you felt the crown of the furnace do like this, but I didn't want my guys to go out and patch what we call the rat hose. I would go and do it, and I'm out working, and here's this guy again in a suit and tie standing at the bottom of the furnace saying, "Hey, Tim, get down here. I want to talk to you about getting into sales." And I'm like, "Jerry, no interest." I told him, I don't even like salespeople. They come to my plant and they stop me from working, doing real work. He's like, "Get down here right now.
Yeah.
You need to understand how this company runs."
Yeah.
He said, "It's sales." That's how I got to Indianapolis, is that Jerry Fowle said, "You're going into sales." And I went and trained in Dallas, and then they shipped me to Indianapolis. Diamond Shamrock.
Yeah.
And that was in 84. 85 May, I moved here, and we've been here ever since.
So let's transition to Rob. We've heard a little about how Tim is a different person because of his dad and his work ethic and just who his parents were. You had an entirely different upbringing, although your mother was nationally known, internationally known in the tennis world, and your father was, very well known. How do you think you are a different person because of your parents?
Well, I think some of the things are very similar. Very, very loving mother, very loving father, big family, 5 boys and a sister. Can't leave her out. Everybody was close. Tom, Greg, and I were a year apart. So, and we didn't start out, when my dad went the Naval Academy, then the Air Force. I was born in one of those Gomer Pyle Quonset hut things down in Homestead, Florida. I mean, if it took a nickel to get around the world, he couldn't get out of sight. Okay? And he came back to Indianapolis when I was maybe 4 and went to work at Chevrolet and law school at night. And we lived in a shoebox over by Nora.
Yeah.
And then graduated. I went to his law school graduation, remember it, and started at Bose, McKinney, and Evans. Made a lot of great friends. Many of them I still have. He passed away in 2018. I hope I got that right. But left a strong legacy, as my mom has, and she's still with us and kicking at 91. But they were very, very faithful people. With church ever since, it's a big deal. And we all went together to St. Christopher's up in Carmel. And I would say that we kind of got away from congregating after I went to school and didn't really spend a lot of time until my wife got sick. Really didn't really go to church much. But
tell us a little about your wife and maybe that chapter of your story and maybe how that affected your faith walk.
That was a big chapter. We started dating when I was 16. Got married for 1980. So she passed in 2019. So almost 40 years. And didn't really have a spiritual journey until she got sick. And then it was her discovery that kind of dragged me along. And, life changes when you're facing something like that. And it wasn't like she got diagnosed. She did get diagnosed, they said 6 to 9 months. It was 11 years.
Cancer. This is
breast cancer.
Cancer.
She was staged at 4 immediately, but had a fantastic doctor, Rimu Ihere, shout out. And those were 11 good years. And so faith became a little bit restored, not because of the adversity, but because we were blessed with having all that time that we weren't supposed to. And, she was never really spiritual until that happened, and it kind of translated, but yeah.
I was interested in your friendship. You obviously got into sales. You said yes. I assume, Rob, you're a tennis player, not a hoopster like Tim. but maybe you're a hoopster as well.
I am. I'm not in his class.
Okay, so two hoopsters coming together. What propelled you, first of all, into your current line? I guess where I'm coming from is, why did someone say, Tim, you need to get $150 million from Rob? What's your business background that led to that phone call? And why did you need that, not only for the school, but your business as well? Tell us a bit about your more recent professional background. And then how did that friendship start to forge around Turning Point?
Okay. So again, that leads into the company Harrison Ford. When I moved here, like I said, I was with Diamond Shamrock. Wall Street Journal had them as the number one company to work for. It was a family. It was a family. More gas stations in Texas than Texaco, but I was on the chemical side. Great place to work. Occidental makes an offer to buy them, and Oxy let go of a whole lot of people, including in the state of Indiana, their sales rep here. And they sent the message that we're going to keep all 50 salespeople from Diamond Shamrock. And they did, everybody that wanted to stay. But when that happened, I had an offer from 3 of my customers to be their sales manager. 3 distributors to be their sales manager, and I make those comments because I wasn't looking for a job. I was perfectly happy to work the rest of my career with Diamond Shamrock, but once Oxy bought them, I was like, I don't have an allegiance to them. Then time went on, and I worked with a company called Aubrey Chemical, sales manager for 5 years and marketing director, had 16 reps reporting to me, 6 branches. That was great. Ed Pickin was fair guy, great guy to work for. And I had a year's non-compete, and I honored it for 2 years. And once I started Harrison Ford, I did not go after Ulrich's customers. I respected Ed so much. Again, qualifying before I tell you this, but how did I start Harrison Ford? Well, had an offer from a company called Mayday Chemical in Michigan, Kalamazoo. They're out of business now. And the offer was $300,000 a year. The most I had, and this was in 1993.
Wow.
Yeah.
300,000 plus commission.
It's almost
right?
like $1 million
She hired an advisor from Notre Dame. And the goal was to find somebody like me, a Black individual that can run this Black-owned minority company that has experience in chemicals, in chemical distribution. That's hard to find. And so he calls me up, and she put the offer in writing, 300,000 plus commission. A lady that lived out in Hallville on Raider Street, Mildred Boyd. And she was known throughout the city. And so she called me and said, take Mother to dinner. I went over, took her to dinner. And on the way back, I was going to say, Mother, before you get out of the car, I need you to pray about this offer. No one knew except for the ones in our house that I had an offer. I was going to ask her, pray about this offer because I don't want money to be the driver. And so before we got to her house, probably 2 minutes beforehand, she said, pull over school parking lot on 29th Street. And we pulled over, and she said, come on, son, let's pray. We prayed for probably 30 seconds, minute at the most. And she said to me, she said, God just said, don't take that offer. Start your own business. You want to know how I started the business? That's how. Because somebody who didn't even know I had an offer said, God said, don't take that offer. Start your own business. And, God has a sense of humor because he didn't tell me what to name it. He didn't tell me where to start it. He didn't give me any money initially to start it with because I was broke. And so, boom, that's how we started Harrison Ford. We ended up.
You've got this offer of $300,000.
Yeah.
And then you've got nothing when you're starting your business.
Not only nothing, Don, we started January 11th of 1994. The first week in May, we still haven't made one sale. We don't have a supplier. We don't have a customer. I'm going to work every day, and the business isn't growing at all. Not at all. The only thing I have is a promise from God, which was just our statement from God: start your own business. He didn't say it's going to be successful. And let me say, I've never heard God's voice audibly, right? But I believed in this woman, and I knew it was God, and my wife knew it was God. My son believed it was God. My daughter had great doubts. Because when I walked in and said, hey, this is what happened, we're going to start our own business, Takoya took off running down the hall, crying, screaming, we're going to lose everything we got. He's going to listen to her. She said, I was going to have a Lexus when I was 16, and now we're going to be broke. Yeah. And then Tanya's saying, you was never going to have a Lexus in this house. I'm the only one. I'm thinking, we're kind of missing the point here. God said, start your own business. Let me say this. So we grew the business. We're in the food, pharmaceutical, cosmetic ingredients primarily. Our customers are the ones who you have their products in the house. If you can name a beverage in your house, I'm going to tell you that's 99% chance that it has something from our warehouse. If you can name a cereal in your house, 99% chance is something from our warehouse. If you use Tide, if you use Kraft, the list goes on and on and on. I spoke at Congress a few years ago, and they estimated that Harrison Ford is in over 95% of the homes in this country. Harrison Ford, yeah.
Can I ask,
Please.
Is it logistics? Tell us a little bit about what the function of this.
So our business is distribution. We buy the product, though. We take ownership of the product, not just a 3PL. We buy the product, we source the product, and we resell it to those customers. Again, the Coca-Colas of the world, the Procter & Gamble's of the world. That's who we sell our products to. Vitamin C would be a perfect example.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's many people on this, listening to this, that probably aren't going to start their own business, but are in the marketplace. And faith will, plays a place in their life, whether it's, should I take the next job, or I'm stuck. What's your advice in terms of how they can have faith be an important part of their life as they look at those decisions or that part of their lives?
And what you just asked is the message that I preached actually yesterday. Rob's friend had asked me on Saturday night. He took a picture of my house, and he's like, hey, man, I'm next door. I'm like, what is going on? Right. So we went over, and he introduced me to my neighbors. Okay.
What can I say?
But Don, the way I was raised, we prioritized God. If you don't have God, there's nothing else that matters. There's no home that was a more loving home than the one I was raised in. And that was because of parents and God. And so I'll say again that if I lost everything I have, and I've been there before, where I was digging through the seats in the car, and my wife was digging through the seats in the house to try to get enough money together to buy one pork shoulder sandwich from Shill's Barbecue on Salem Avenue in Dayton, Ohio. I was just as happy as what I am now without money. Yeah. Money is not my big motivator in life. One time, my partner, Joe, we had a company come in, and he said, the more you do with Harris, the more he can do down the street. And I said, let me correct that. And this was the first meeting. I said, I have to correct that. I said, the more I do down the street, the more God allows Harrison Ford to do. Because that's how it works, that God keeps growing the pie no matter what I do, no matter what I give away. built a stadium in Chillicothe, Ohio. It has my father's name on it. Okay. Obadiah Harris Sports Complex. You can pull it up. One of the best stadiums in Southern Ohio. The more I do, the more God allows the business to grow. I don't remember so how does faith enter into that? Okay. Again, the way we started the business, a little old lady says, don't take the offer, start your own business. My story goes back. I remember 8 years old, I had an appendectomy. My dad at the city hospital at that time was now an x-ray technician. He worked 2 jobs. When he retired, he had 72 years worth of working experience, according to Social Security data, right? Because he was x-ray technician, they allowed him into surgery. And he came out of the surgery and told my mom what happened. He said, he's crying. He said, Mary, they lost him. And mom said, Obadiah. That's my dad's name. Obadiah. She said, God just told me something happened. But the last thing God said, I'm not going to take your baby. She went and dropped a nickel, dime, whatever, and prayed. When dad went back in, they were sewing me up. And they said, we don't know what happened. Obadiah said, it's hard to start beating on the song. So them thumping, them shocking, whatever they didn't work. But here I am, and that's how I'm here. And I've told that story almost everywhere they've asked me to be the keynote speaker, that I'm here because of God. How can I not have faith in God? How can faith not be the primary motivator in my life? It is. It is done. Yeah.
Maybe I tend to be more selfish. Sometimes, unfortunately, but kind of God, as a side thought. If I want to prioritize God this week, what actions, what do I need to do to do that?
Yeah, so Jesus really addressed that. A lot of times people think, go in my prayer closet, pray all day, and that makes me more spiritual. What you actually see with Jesus is he prayed all night, and then during the day, he was in the temple teaching and healing and things of that nature. In Acts chapter 20, Paul said that he worked, so he had to give to those that were with him. And that's sometimes we miss that. Even when Jesus sent out the disciples in Matthew 10:10, their only hire was their meat and the place that they stayed. Paul said, having food and clothing, he said, learn therewith to be content. But what we have formulated is that I can't be happy unless I get bigger barns, bigger this, bigger that. What life is about is it's about having a connection with God so that you can go and do something for somebody else. I'm thinking about Philippians chapter 1, verse 19. Paul said that I will be saved through the Church of Philippi's prayers. And so what I'm saying in saying that is goes back to the who's your neighbor, the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan. On Judgment Day, there's going to be a lot of folks that are standing before the throne. And he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you, you workers of iniquity. And they're going to say, what's up with that? He said, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was cold, you didn't clothe me. He said, when I was sick and in prison, you didn't come to visit me. And they said, man, when? And he said, when you failed to do it to the least of these little ones, you failed to do it to me. And so, part of salvation has to do with the born again experience. John 3 and 5 talk about, and the book of Acts talks about, but you get empowered so that you can do things for somebody else. You go to the gas station and you don't turn your car on and sit there at the pump and let it run and so you can fill it up some more. You put gas in it so you can go out in the world and do a job.
So in some instances, if all of us could have a humble prayer that says, Lord, show me who the least of these is in my life, right? In the job I have and the place I work, maybe to confess our own selfishness, right? And help my unbelief.
Yes.
That, Lord, you said you'd give me a life and have it more abundantly.
Yeah.
And I've doubted that some. Help my unbelief to believe that I can be as happy. I know when I've gone on mission trips to third world countries and I see people earning $3 and $4 a day, and I know they're happier than I am.
Yeah.
Their kids are working with them. The parents are in the same thing. They live in the back of the house, and you'd think, wow, they are teaching me the joy of life. So let's maybe turn.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes,
Jesus
please.
said in Matthew 5, it's more blessed to give than to receive. He said that message in Matthew 5. Paul talked about it in Acts 20, but it does make you happy.
Yeah.
You're better off if you do stuff for somebody else. I'm sorry for interrupting.
And so in some instances, it might be our time, but then also it might be, hey, you know what? I don't really want to write this check for $300 to the least of these, but by faith, you commanded me to. I don't really want to. I'm going to.
Right. But keep in mind, though, what he speaks of in 1 Corinthians 13. He said, if I give my body to burn, and he said, if I give all my goods to feed the poor and I don't have charity, it profits me nothing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are condemned and shamed into giving, and who they're giving to, if they go back and see them the next year, it really hasn't helped them. And so it's more than just the money that you give. It's about, I'm not going to give, there's some folks I wouldn't give a dime to, not one dime to, but I will sit down with them. I did it going into the courthouse, and Duckwing Duck was sitting on the sidewalk quacking as everybody was walking, attorneys, judges, policemen, and I sat down with him. This was in like February. His hands was busted from being froze and frostbit. And I said, what's your name? And he went, quack, right in my ear. Duckwing Duck. I said, don't quack in my ear no more. Okay, don't ever quack in my ear. Now, let's talk about why you're here. And we was able to help him. We took a guy in that lived with us that had been arrested 58 times by the time he was 18. We was able to help him. Teardrops tattooed down his face. We've been able to help people. You come to our church, it's mostly folks like that. That's why they have a crazy praise. They used to do crack and shoot. And So,
well, you want to open it up to the audience? Are there any questions?
Bob Schloss says, wow, praise the Lord. Such a great testimony.
Jesus.
I'd love to ask, Tim, when you met Rob and you two started working together, how did Rob become a catalyst? Talk about Rob and your partnership and what you two have been able to achieve together.
So again, I'm from the other side of the track in Chillicothe. I came to Indianapolis, and the day I got here, I felt the Lord saying, man, this is home. 2 weeks after my family moved here, they wanted me to move to Houston, New York, or Cincinnati to a bigger territory. I said, no, God is telling me this is home. Didn't know a lot of people. The people that I primarily know are folks that are folks involved in the programs I'm in. My son said years ago, he said, Dad, he said, you don't have no friends. This is what he said. He said, the only friends you have are folks who want something from you. And I said, well, Lord gave me a son. not Rob. Not Rob. But that's why I put my arm around my son. I said, Lord gave me a son. And I believe there's folks that are my friends, but I don't know people. I never just rub shoulders to rub shoulders, never been political. And but God puts people in your lives that operate on a level higher than you operate on, or operate on a level to where they can help you do what God's called you to do. And so I was introduced to Rob, and I never met somebody that knew everybody and everybody knows him. You know, they used to say it's not who you know, right? Or
What you know,
what
it's
you
who
know.
you
what
know.
who you know. But then I changed and said, no, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Because a lot of times people say, yeah, I know him, and you don't really know him. Rob, again, I was serious. He picked up the phone and said, hey, I got this guy sitting here and he needs $150 million. He said it wasn't that easy. I think it was that easy. He had him sold already. So, Rob, I've gone to Rob, for so many decisions that I had to make business wise, connections, et cetera, et cetera. He's the guy that God put in my life to be instrumental. So go ahead, Rob.
So what was interesting to me was Tim can come off as folksy, a man of the people. He wears many different hats. And if you see him at services, he has a presentation method and manner that reaches everybody up and down. So he kind of
he's the senior pastor of Turning Point Church.
Turning Point Church. And so I go over for a meeting. I'm going to say this was in 2011 or 12. I don't remember. And they're proposing to do this incredibly ambitious capital project in Iowa. And so I'm in there with all the money guys, I think a couple lawyers. And it's over, and we're getting a break out, and I go, no, you stay. I want you to explain to me exactly what's going on at this facility. Okay. I want to know the chemistry. I want to know the production methodology. I want to understand the logistics of transportation. And then we spent the next 2 hours, okay, getting on the chemical engineer side of how chlor-alkali production actually occurs. I had no idea. I didn't even know really what those words meant. And I said, and when you do all this, what are you going to make and what's involved? And he's up on the whiteboard going through this. And I'm sitting here. It was, I mean, he was in his element, a different element, but no pun intended. And it was eye-opening to watch how easily he went from one thing to another. And I'm taking notes vigorously and saying, I got to come back and I'm going to have to look that up on Wikipedia. But it was clear to me when it was over, this is not only a great idea, this is the guy to do it. And made it pretty easy after that. But seeing that other side, understanding that of all the hats he wears, the one that is driving the bus is his understanding of the elements of his business. And I don't just mean sales, but really understanding that the chemistry and the things. Maybe you should talk for a minute. I think you'd be interested in hearing this about what you're doing out there right now with the tank farm.
Yeah. So we're out at 9307 East 56th Street. We bought out there at the Fort Benjamin Harrison. And one of the reasons why we secured that 10 acres was because I was told that was the only property on the fort where we could have rail. The CSX main line runs through there. That was the motivator back in 1998 to do the deal. We bought the property and then they said, can't have rail. A few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, CSX said, you can do rail now. We can work this thing. And so before they changed their mind again, we installed 3 spurs off the main track. We have 9 tanks that are 32,000 gallons each. Those 32,000 gallon tanks, we will bring in rail cars, which are about 20,000 gallons, unload into there. From there, we will fill rail cars, or we will mix product, or we will fill tank trucks, or we will fill drums, totes, pails, etc. And we will fill those in the white rooms. Some people call them clean rooms, that we've built. So we just did an $18 million expansion, and we actually, thank God, we paid cash for it. We didn't have to get extra loan for that, but we'll be doing a lot of additional value add for the food, pharma, cosmetic world. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from?
No.
Okay. So we want to hear a little maybe more about Turning Point Academy around that. And this is at 42nd and Post. Our corporate offices are 30th and Post, so we're pretty familiar with the neighborhood.
4501 North Post.
4501 North Post. Okay. most of the schools around there are F-rated, maybe D-rated. The state of Indiana has A through F rating. Turning Point is an A.
A-rated.
And most folk would say, look at the demographics, and you have a high unemployment and high crime and high about everything. Mm-hmm. What makes it different? And tell us a little about why it's been able to be as successful as it is.
Yeah, in man's eyes, all the variables are against us being successful there. When I was on my other partner, Chris Spangle board, Indiana Chamber of Commerce, the only reason I agreed to be on that was because he said I could be on the K through 12 committee. I remember one year we brought a professor in from Tennessee. He did the biggest study ever done in the country. And all the kids in the public schools, he tracked them for like 12 years. And he was going to determine which variable is most important as to the success of the students. You know what it was? It had nothing to do with income. It had nothing to do with race. It boiled down to the teacher. That if they had a good teacher, that they go above the curve. If they have a bad teacher, they go below the curve. And the sweet spot for a teacher is between 5 and 10 years. So they could take a teacher from a successful, monetary area, put them in the hood, and the kids in the hood's performance increased. Flip that if you had a bad teacher and put it in a great district, it went down. And then it takes 3 years for them to get back onto the curve. So the success is partly in the teachers. And the success of the teachers has to do a lot with the fact that they have a God conscience, that they're not looking at those kids as just a number and as a paycheck. They actually love them, and they want them and are willing to do whatever they got to do to make every kid in that classroom successful. So God and the teachers are the two primary elements. We built a facility, second to none. It's conducive to learning. That's the other piece of that. And I think that would be the answer that I give. You walk into our environment, it's an environment for learning. We don't play. You have uniforms. You're not cutting a design in your hair. The kids aren't wearing earrings in their nose and all that kind of stuff. And we've had folks to buck our decisions, and they can buck out the door. Right? Because you're not going to bring down the learning environment here at TP Schools. It's an environment built to learn, and we have a success rate that's second to none.
Is it charter, private? What is it?
It's a private school.
Private school.
Yeah. Okay. It's a private church school. But one of the other beautiful things about it is that in any school year, it's only about 5 to 10% of the kids that are from our actual church. And so we're benefiting the neighborhood as a whole and the city as a whole. And kids that may not have they wouldn't have as great of a chance of success somewhere else at TP Schools, they do great.
Rob and Tim, what does your friendship look like now? And how does each of you animate each other's lives so that the sum of your parts is much bigger than just adding things up? It's really creating something that you would never want to give up and is loving this community well.
Well, it's really evolving. One of the things I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it, but there's the school, there's the church, there's the business. But what has impressed me as much as anything else is, and I hope you will talk about it, the other things that you do in the community, the homes, the food, the books, and how you drum that up. If you could just, I know you asked me that, but I'd really like him to respond.
Yeah. So again, they're just setting up my personal website. I think it's TimothyMHarris.com. I think you can get there by just TimHarris.com. But on there, you'll see in India, that we built 6 children's homes, ground up. We built a widow's home, and we have an academy, a sewing academy, where they learn a livelihood. We provide sewing machines to them so that when they graduate, they have a place to go. We adopted a leper colony of about 100 lepers. So we feed them. I sent a team to India, a team of 4 in 2019, and I gave 4 checks. And I said, you're going to 7 different cities. You have 4 checks. The first day they called me crying, saying, we're at this leper colony and oh my gosh, we got to do something. They're crawling down the street to get food. Some of them hand off, foot off, and they're crawling to get food. And this is a Christian leper colony in India. And so I'm like, you got to check. And so we sponsored them. The 7 children's homes that we built, each of them had about 30 kids in it. Those kids were more like grade school, middle school level, but now a lot of them are in college. And so if you go on my site, you'll see pictures, 114 kids that were paying their college tuition. Now, it's not much over there, and they get just as good an education. But those are the kind of things that we do. In Nairobi, Kenya, we built a multi-purpose center, Zimbabwe. I mean, all over the world, we're doing great stuff. You mentioned Indianapolis. Well, in Indianapolis, we bought homes, and even across the street from the church, we allow folks to live in those homes. We make it real convenient for them to live there without taxing them hardly at all. And I'll make the final comment offline. Because Rob knows the rest of that. The whole goal is to help them being able to manage themselves.
Sure. One more thing about how much food you distribute.
How much food? $20 million. So we also founded Jessica Braden at 2525 North Shadeland. We have Deborah's Place. Jessica Braden is an individual who, when she came here, she was in the Julian Center for Battered Women. We worked with her, our church, and so she came to me a couple of years ago and said, hey, I want to be able to help women that are in the position I was in when I first got here. And so I said, man, Jessica, I got just the place. And so just in 1 year alone, 23, we distributed over $20 million worth of goods in this city. So almost every hospital, the jails, the sheriff department, the police department, the list goes on and on, that we provide food, we supply clothing, big screen TVs, bicycles, on and on and on and on. That's some of the stuff that God has blessed us to be able to do through the success of Harrison Ford.
One of the most helpful advice someone gave me one time was from Henry Blackaby's book. And he said, find out where God is really moving or God is working and go there.
Yeah.
And as iron sharpens iron, so does one man's countenance sharpen that of another. And certainly hearing your both of your stories, sure, you're a better person because of your closeness to Tim. And Tim, you're a better person because of your closeness to Rob. And we're just so incredibly thankful for what you're doing and that you take the time to do this podcast. So thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Advice. Yeah, thank both of you, all of you.
Any closing short comment from either of you relative to how we can be together in Christ for the good of Indianapolis? What's your burning?
You got an attorney and a preacher. So I got that short part. Go ahead, Rob.
Short isn't in their vocabulary. Or it has a different definition.
Then I'll make it mine short.
Alongside you with your vision for this.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, this goes to a comment I think Don started it, Tim's living it, is, nobody wants to be the richest man in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And there are so many opportunities to contribute money for sure. But the thing that is the most impressive to me is the amount of time somebody spends. And I don't know how he does it. I know he's a short sleeper, like 4 hours a night, but the hats he wears, the things he does, the lives he touches, requires him to be present. And not just to be present, but to be prepared and on message and understanding who he's with. And I've watched him at all those capacities.
Mm-hmm.
And, I look at it and there are takeaways. It's like with any person who comes in your life where you see something that you admire or you're influenced by. It's not always going to work for you, but you're looking for how it works for them. And are there takeaways that I can introduce into my life that make me more effective, that maybe make me, or maybe even less ineffective than I would otherwise be. And again, watching him with these different hats and how he operates and works, good moments, bad moments, the whole thing, it is inspiring. It's one of the best kept secrets in the city for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim.
There's a song that says something like, you can build a cathedral, great or small. You can build a skyscraper, grand or tall. You can conquer all the failures of your past. It says, but only what you do for Christ will last. And again, it's not just a saying to me, but Jesus is the reason. I owe him, and I'm thankful that I'm not doing things out of obligation. I love God. I love the people, and God puts folks in my life like Rob. He puts them in my life on purpose, and I just want to do what he gives me to do while I'm here because I got this much time.
Yeah.
That little dash on that tombstone is the amount of time everybody's got.
This has been a sacred time. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us
so much.
And thank you for joining us here on Big Hearted Indy, provided by Citizen 7. You can learn more about Citizen 7 Indy at Citizen 7, the number, citizen7indy.com. And you can find all the upcoming events. You can join heartbeat.chat, which is about to become SocioConnect. More on that later. But make sure you sign up for emails. That's the most crucial part in staying in the loop in the Citizen 7 universe. We'll call it the universe, not just the world. All right. Thanks for joining us. Please, we'd love for you to share this on your LinkedIn. Share this episode if you found it of value, which we certainly did. Thank you again. We'll see you again next month.